Yes.
TVA's already announced that they're going to replace the steam generator shortly after they begin operation. So it seems like a lot of this pre-op and operational testing are on a steam generator that's no longer going to be relevant. How are you going to handle that?
Replacement of steam generators isn't new. Many of the pressurized water reactors in the United States have had replacement steam generators. So we would handle that under the same process. We have inspections specifically for steam generator replacements. We would handle it that way as far as inspecting those activities. We do not, we're not aware right now that the TVA is set for replacement of steam generators. Did that answer your question?
Pretty much, yeah. Thanks.
Next slide, please.
Bob,
Yes.
are the results of those inspections going to be part of the upcoming report? The one that's supposed to be published sometime this month?
I'll get to it later as far as how we document inspection results, but every 6 weeks we will issue an inspection report that will capture all the inspections that have occurred during that period.
Okay.
So the inspections that Tommy and his U.S. inspectors do, if we have a regional inspector out here looking at something, the results during that 6-week period get documented in an inspection report. We issue it to TVA, but it's a public document and it's available in our document control program. TVA was constructing facility and acceptable level of quality. During the 12-month period, there were 12 violations identified by NRC inspections. 3 of those violations related to commercial grade dedication program, and they were characterized by a severity level 3 problem. The 9 other violations were severity level 4. We had no substantive cross-cutting issues during the period. For the severity level 3 problem, the NRC assessed TVA a $70,000 civil penalty associated with that issue. And we have performed a follow-up inspection for that severity level 3 problem back in February, and it will be documented. And as activities become available for us to look at, meaning TVA has accomplished something or they're performing something, we'll schedule the regional inspectors to come out and look at those activities. So we're continuing.
Yes, sir. I have several questions for you. You mentioned the findings on this referring to the commercial grade materials being used, not inspected, in quality assurance and assessments of that was a severity level 3. Could you briefly explain the other severity levels, 1, 2, 3, in brief, if you could, you know, and to include 4? Is there a brief description that you could give of those severity levels and how 3 fits into the tree there?
Probably not to the justice I need to. Yes, our enforcement process has different severity levels. And they're 1, 2, 3, and 4, as you mentioned. And I don't have the definition, otherwise I'm not going to be able to read it. 1 and 2 are significant issues, 1 being more significant than 2. Very rarely do we issue 1 and 2. We have issued them, but I mean, severity level 3 are uncommon, but they do occur. Severity level 4 are the majority of our violations, and you know, I don't even know if I venture a guess, but in the 90%, I'm sure, and probably the high 90%, you know, the violations that we issue are severity level 4 violations. So it's not very often that we issue something more than severity level 3. And again, I'm not giving a good example, but we have a very defined process on how we go about looking at severity levels, especially when you get into the escalated enforcement, severity level 3 and above. It involves both the region and our headquarters office. We have an office of enforcement. They get involved in escalated enforcement, again, to make sure we're following the enforcement policy and making sure we're consistent in the application of that.
Thank you. That's good. Like I said, my name's Gary Morgan. On slide 12, you mentioned there was 87 items closed. You also mentioned there was 500 items inspected. How many items were identified as problem areas? You say you closed 87, but how many total items were identified as problem areas?
So there were, when we developed the program, and we've added on a little bit each year as new things come up, but there's currently right now there's 547 items that we have to inspect for Watts Bar Unit 2. I mentioned in 2013 we closed 87 of those items. We inspected more than 87, but we closed 87. The problems, I'm not sure how you want to define problems, but the fact that we had violations, there were 12 violations associated with our inspections last year. So if you want to associate problems to violations, that would be one benchmark.
Okay. Oh.
Now,
So you've closed, let me phrase it like this. Out of the 547 items, you've closed out 87 of them.
now, and I probably misled that.
Okay.
I was trying to give a view of the amount of work we did in 2013. Currently, we have closed 360, 380. There's a number of open items. It's 169 right now. That's where we stand. And I'm focusing more on the ones that we have still left to inspect. So that's 169. Do the math between 147 and 169. That's the number that we have currently closed. And that would include the 87 we closed in 2013.
I got you.
Okay.
Are there any of those items that are still open that could be probable violations that you're taking a closer look at?
None that are identified right now. We have a means to be able to track something like that. If we do an inspection and we find a potential problem, but we haven't fully resolved it, we can call that an unresolved item. I don't believe we have any unresolved items open right now for Watts Bar Unit 2.
Now, there was a mention of the steam generators earlier. And of course, there's a problem with those steam generators. Do y'all plan on doing operational testing with the defective steam generators in place? Or will those steam generators be replaced before operational testing will occur?
The pre-operational testing that I mentioned, is part of our inspection program that we have to do before the plant is licensed. So we'll perform those pre-operational inspections of testing that TVA does. So that will be accomplished. Specific testing to the steam generators, I'm not sure the level of inspection there or even the level of testing. But TVA does not plan to change the steam generators before the plant is licensed. So the existing steam generators will be in place as they do the testing and as we do our inspections.
So y'all are going to allow the plant to go forward with defective steam generators in place?
No, I did not say that. I didn't say that the steam generators are defective. I understand TVA has placed an order to purchase new steam generators.
Yes, sir. The TVA has indicated there's defective metal in steam generators, and it has shown that in previous examples, there's a possibility that those steam generators, because of defective metal, there could be disintegration of the parts and, of course, create problems. So, I'm interested in this, and the public, of course, ought to be interested in this. Just how defective are these generators? Is it going to be a problem in the startup? Could there be denigration of the materials? Since it's already been said, they're going to have to be replaced.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the refurbishment program, how they're looking at the equipment currently in place to ensure that it's capable of performing its function once the plant becomes operational. Part of that was where TVA examined their steam generators using non-destructive testing methods, looking for flaws, problems, make sure they were sound and they're acceptable for use right now. We did monitor that. We inspected those to make sure that the examination techniques were acceptable and that they provided adequate coverage of the steam generator too. So right now, our view would be, TVA has done the inspections that they need to perform to make sure the steam generators are capable of performing their function. And what we're looking at really would be a safety function, the integrity of the tubes. So we have looked at that, and we believe, there's no reason to believe that there's going to be an immediate problem. Now, if there is a long-term degradation mechanism, this is not new to the industry. The industry's been dealing with that, and the NRC has been monitoring industry's actions to ensure the degradation is understood and that it's not to the point where you would have possible damage during an operating cycle.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Watts Bar has had a dubious history going back several years. Of course, the current plant that, it may come on operation here, inspection, it's off and on again. And Watts Bar 1, there was problems in Watts Bar 1 with falsified documents. And Watts Bar 2, there's been a problem with falsified documents, and allegedly that's been corrected. We hope it's been corrected. I think you all have indicated it's been corrected. TVA has been indicated it's corrected. But it's what concerns me is from looking at history, looking at the history of the plant. And I trust y'all's opinion and y'all's inspection. I trust that. But looking at the history, there's also a history there which involves whistleblowers, which involves attempted murder of whistleblowers, which involves legal action against the TVA and contractors. Or can you give the public assurance that currently at Watts Bar there's no skullduggery going on with threats of whistleblowers or threats of employees, that all systems, when you put your rubber stamp or you put your seal of approval on that everything is up and above board, and that we're not going to have these problems that we've had in the past, and if you do see them, you're going to be quickly resolved? Can you give the public assurance of that?
Let me talk about a couple of things that we've done, hopefully address that question. So you indicated there was that problem with falsified records.
Mm-hmm.
It was well known, the situation. We had our Office of Investigation looking into that. We were pursuing it as far as our enforcement process, and part of that enforcement process allows for alternative dispute resolution, ADR. TVA chose to go the ADR route. There was a meeting between TVA and the NRC. We actually issued an order that defined all the corrective actions TVA had to do to address the falsification of those records. We've inspected the corrective actions for that order, and we believe they've taken the actions that they committed to us in the order. So I'd say for that issue, we think they've taken appropriate corrective action. We are very sensitive to falsification. Tommy can talk a little, but we monitor the corrective action program. If there are examples where there's questions of accuracy of records, we highlight that. We put it into our process to see if we want to review it or investigate it. We look at TVA's Employee Concerns Program to see if that's an avenue where possible examples of quality of records, falsification of records could come up, and we would pursue it that way. So we're very sensitive to examples that may lead to falsification, and make sure that we're appropriately aware of that, and more importantly, the TVA is addressing those. So that's part of that question.
I think last week at the Unit 1 cycle meeting, and Bob Monk spoke a little bit about the fact that we're present at a lot of these meetings that TVA has. We talk to the people in the plant. We periodically meet with the Employee Concerns Program Coordinator, and so we do this to really understand what the environment, and by that I mean what the safety conscious work environment is at the plant. So as far as the order goes, I was involved with that inspection. We followed up on those corrective actions, and we quizzed TVA, and then independently verified as to whether or not those actions actually got carried through. So as far as that's concerned, we believe that those actions are adequate. And then just from a general plant standpoint, as far as what I'm aware of, as of today, I'm not aware of any significant safety conscious work environment type issues. So, but we do monitor it. I mean, that's something that we're highly sensitive to. All our inspectors, I mean, anytime we're in a meeting, we look at the interaction that takes place. We review the individual PER, similar to how Bob Monk does it for the Unit 1 side. I mean, I read every single PER that comes through, and we'll annotate them, and when we feel or deem necessary to follow up, we'll do so.
I guess one other piece would be, we have a very robust allegation process. So if an individual comes to us, whether it's a member of the public or a worker there, and they express a concern to us, we have a process, and it's very formal, and it needs to be to make sure that we fully vet any issues. And we will look at those, and for all those issues that fall within our regulatory purview, we will take action on and follow up on those. And whistleblowers, it's part of it. So if things come to us in that program, we will certainly look into it, and whether we do an inspection or whether we launch an investigation with our Office of Investigation, we'll appropriately follow up on those issues.
Thanks, I appreciate it. TVA was assessed a $70,000 civil penalty in this, in the quality, because of the quality assurance program failures, basically. Yeah. And it's noted that the TVA did not report the breakdown in the quality assurance program to the NRC, even when it was reasonably apparent. Now, has all this been corrected? Of course, within the same area here, it says that the Region 2 administrator for the construction, Fred Brown, said that TVA has aggressively addressed these issues. But I'm interested in y'all and the inspectors. Is there going to be any more further quality assurance programs? I mean, are those parts still, are there still commercial non-nuclear graded parts in place out there, or has the NRC and TVA went in and inspected all the parts, and y'all are willing to say, hey, okay, everything is up and above board now, everything's rated for a nuclear plant? Is there going to be further problems there?
So we identified a violation with their commercial grade dedication process, how they were going about dedicating commercial grade equipment parts for application in nuclear power plant. And we have followed up on the corrective actions, the changes that they've made to their program, such that future commercial grade dedication applications where they bring in those parts and want to use them in the plant will be acceptable. That they have the right program in place right now to complete those dedication processes. We also looked at TVA's actions to say, okay, what have they already procured under that problem, under that program that had these problems? And they went back and looked at all the items that they procured, both and they had in the warehouse and in the plant, and to our satisfaction, they have looked at all those items and deemed those items either acceptable for use or they've replaced them. So we think they have fixed the problem as far as there was a program issue, and they went back and looked at where that may have caused problems in the plant and addressed that. As far as the reportability, you mentioned that, reporting to the NRC, that was another issue where they had a flaw in their program as far as how they went about looking at those type of issues and whether they determined that it should be reported to the NRC, and they have since fixed that.
That's been fixed?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Just to follow up on that, so you're comfortable that there's not a single item in the plant right now that has not been properly inspected and certified?
So remember, we're a sampling organization. We don't look at 100% of pretty much anything. So what we do look at are, the corrective actions. Do they have appropriate corrective actions? If taken, will resolve the problem. And then we sample those. So that's what we did for this issue. So we did not go out and look at the 5,000 or 50,000, whatever the number was. We did not look at each one of those. We looked at the corrective actions they had in place. Was the scope appropriately to bound the problem? And then we sampled certain items to make sure that they were following the process.
So there could well be a pipe fitting in the plant now that hasn't been inspected and certified?
If TVA took the corrective actions that they had, within their program, if TVA took those corrective actions, and we believe they did, The answer is no, that they would address this. Yes, ma'am.
I was curious about that too, because a year ago, you said there was still a still undetermined number of the part. So basically, somehow you identified the determinate number, and TBA has told you that they have inspected all of those. Is that correct?
TBA identified the population based on their records on what they had procured under the commercial grade dedication program. And again, whether it was installed in the plant or in the warehouse or where it was. So they identified the population and the actions that they needed to take to make sure either it was acceptable for use or they replaced it, or if it was in the warehouse, they might have done the same thing.
So they've done that since last year.
That process, it took them a while just because of the numbers. Joe, how many items are we talking about that you guys had to go back and look at?
Well, Waltz Part 2 is over 500 specific category IDs.
Yeah, but when it boiled down to actual parts, it was a lot higher than that.
Numerous samples for each category.
Yes. And it took them a while to do that. And last year, when we reported out that they were in the process, and now we can report the fact they have completed the corrective actions, we have followed up with our inspection of those corrective actions, and we're satisfied that they've completed them appropriately.
Another question I had was regarding the falsification of records, and I'm glad to hear that you think it's been resolved, but I'm curious about the process a little bit, if you don't mind revealing a little bit about that. For example, the micrometer readings that were incorrectly recorded. I just wonder, when you go to look at something like that, do you actually find out who recorded that and why, whether they did it on their own or whether someone asked them to do that, and what kind of actions are taken towards the person who does that to ensure that it doesn't happen again?
I guess I'd start off there first is recognize TBA identified. It wasn't an NRC inspection that identified records were falsified. They identified the corrective action program, and you became aware of it as part of that program.
It was a subcontractor, right?
That a subcontractor had falsified records.
But my question is, so did they identify who in that subcontractor?
Yes.
Or do they just stop doing business with that subcontractor? Or, you know, how does that work?
In this example, they clearly identified who was aware and who was involved with falsified records. And the actual Department of Justice took legal actions against those individuals. TBA also took actions against them as far as employment and things like that. They looked at extent and condition. We actually had our Office of Investigation looking into that. What was the scope of it? How far did it go? So we did an investigation, which is different than inspecting. We have investigators who ask questions and with badges, and we have inspectors, with flashlights and micrometers. So our Office of Investigation actually looked into that, and they wrote an investigation report. And that all fed into what I described as an alternative dispute resolution process, where we looked at what was the issue, NRC's view of the issue, the corrective actions that the TBA had taken, and new additional corrective actions. And again, we were satisfied that if they took those corrective actions appropriately, they would solve the problem. And then we followed up and did inspections to make sure those corrective actions were properly implemented.
Let me add, as part of those corrective actions, and we can provide you a copy of the order, there are some corrective actions in there that talk about how TBA would expand some of the language in their contract to have their contract, contractors, subcontractors, for example, ensure that there's language where it would prevent cases like this. So, and I actually reviewed those procedures and those documents. So we confirmed that that language was there.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm also delighted that TBA caught it.
Well, they caught that. I mean, There's 300 people out there working at the site. We have 4 res inspectors, and inspectors go out there on a weekly basis. They certainly have more eyes out there. And that's why we monitor their corrective action program, so when they identify an issue, especially if it has potential long-term falsification and things like that, we take that under consideration and certainly look into that. Because we don't want examples like that to fester or problems like that to occur. You know, we encourage TVA to be very aggressive towards those issues too. Just to make sure, you know, they have the mindset out there that they're not going to tolerate false violations.
Real briefly, you mentioned 13,000 hours of inspection in a year, more or less, and you said that was about 2.5 times what you normally see. Can you say something about why? Is it because it's an older plant, or is there something else, some other reason you're doing so much inspection there?
I was comparing that to an operating plant.
Okay.
So we have a set inspection program we do for operating plants, and it's certainly not, it's apples and oranges. Construction and the 500 items we've got for you to do, there's no comparison in just how the program is set up and the number of things that we look at and the number of inspectors we have. So I was just using that, just to give you a sense of, you know, we are out here, while we only are 4 full-time res inspectors and weekly regional inspectors, we do spend a lot of time inspecting that. And that's why I highlighted we have 8 pages, an 8-page enclosure that talks about the inspections we're going to do this year. That's not a trivial effort. That's a lot of inspection time. We're going to be actually looking at, you know, how TVA is constructing and testing this plant. Yeah, so that was really to try to, again, give you an appreciation of what we're doing. Other questions?